This is a Dynamite Network podcast.
Hi, welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Johnny DC.
And I'm his twin brother, Marvelous Joe.
And in this episode, we are doing a duel between the Superman villain, Mr. Mxyzptlk, and the Fantastic Four villain, Impossible Man.
Yeah, they're both impish characters who are insanely powerful. They actually had a crossover in the Superman Silver Surfer Pop one-shot issue, but we're here to fully settle the debate who would win between these two characters, no holds barred.
Right, because that ended in a stalemate, and we don't play like that.
There's not going to be any Superman or Silver Surfer to save Mr. Mxyzptlk's ass this time.
Or Impossible Man's. But before that, we're going to break down the comic book movie news from the past week, which, no, we're not, because once again, there is no comic book movie news worth talking about.
Yeah, well, what's up with this drought that we're in right now? You think as we're gearing up to the Superman and Fantastic Four films and the Ironheart show that there'd be more news going around?
Well, I figured that Superman and Fantastic Four would be having final trailers soon to kind of say, hey, tickets are now on sale. But Fantastic Four jumped the gun and put their tickets on sale before even having a final trailer. And I'm like, what?
That reminds me, I got to buy my tickets.
Wait, you don't have your tickets yet? Fake fan.
I'm getting them. I'm going to get them right now, actually. So just keep talking while I do that.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but Marvel sucks big time. Let me tell you why. Not only do they put their tickets out without releasing a final trailer, like who does that? But also...
Wait, what are you doing?
You told me to keep talking.
I mean, continue on with the episode.
Oh, okay.
Not go on to an editorial, you
Gotcha. All right. Well, as always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out our show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic. Our artificially intelligent duel simulator, AJ9K, has a quick message for our listeners, so listen up.
Why, hello there. Do you want even more from this podcast? Then become a part of the Dynamic Duel community on Patreon, where you can choose from 3 tiers. The Dynamic 2.0 tier gives you access to our Discord chat server, the Fantastic 4 tier gives you 2 bonus episodes each month, and the X-Force tier makes you an executive producer of this show. Lastly, the Dynamite Podcast Network tier lets you create your own podcast using this Monte Carlo simulator. Johnny and Joe will help you develop your show, provide graphic support and consultation, and get you simulation results. Pitch the twins your ideas via email at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. Check it out at patreon.com/dynamicduel. Pip pip cheerio.
Thanks, AJ9K, and thanks to everyone who supports this podcast. Guys, be sure to tune in to the other shows on the Dynamite Podcast Network this week, including the Console Combat Podcast, where hosts John and Dean simulate battles between popular video game characters. In yesterday's episode, they pit Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy versus Ike from Fire Emblem.
Over on the Max Destruction podcast, hosts Scotty and Gilly pit your favorite action heroes from film and television against each other. This week, the brothers are pitting the Tick against Goliath from Gargoyles.
And on the Senjo World podcast, host Zachary Hepburn speculates on fights between fan-favorite anime and manga characters. In his next episode, Zach is going to reveal who would win between Yu Kanda from D. Greyman versus Tokiya Mikagami from Flame of Rekka.
Visit dynamicpodcasts.com or click the link in our show notes to listen to all of the shows in the Dynamite Podcast Network.
But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize!
A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on Instagram for the person that we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week, we asked you guys, how did you find Dynamic Duel, and how long have you been listening to the show? And this is coming off of the news that Jonathan and I will be ending this podcast in January of 2026 as it currently exists. Basically, it's not going to be a weekly show anymore because Jonathan and I have been doing this for 10 years. We started it on our 30th birthday, and we thought our 40th birthday would be a good time to retire the show. So we're going to stop doing weekly episodes, but we're still going to review the latest Marvel and DC comic book movies that come out to theaters because we want to retain our Rotten Tomatoes credentials as critics.
So basically, this was a horrible question, though, because there was no way we could pick an answer. So this week, there are no honorable mentions, and there's really no winner. We appreciate everyone who called in, and we're going to play all of your answers, because you guys are all winners.
Yeah, everyone's a winner.
You get a no prize, and you get a no prize, and you get a no prize.
Let's go ahead and hear from the callers, starting with Cyrus Moore, who said,
Hey guys, Cyrus Moore. I found you guys in 2019. I was in a pretty low place and I was just going through Spotify trying to find a DC podcast that would tickle my fancy, and I just happened to stumble upon you guys, and I've just been listening every day since 2019 and haven't missed an episode. And I love you guys and thank you for always making a great show. I appreciate it.
Not gonna lie, one of the most heartwarming things about doing this podcast is hearing feedback like this, where we helped bring some kind of joy to someone's life.
Yeah, and he jumped in at the right time too, because 2019 is when this show probably started getting good. It took us a few years of trying to nail this formula before we finally got it. And not saying this show is good.
It could be better.
It could be better. It could
Hopefully
always
by
be
this
better.
year we'll nail it.
Yeah. Year 10 is our year.
Year 10 is when the show really gets good. Finally. Thanks, Cyrus Moore. Our next answer comes from Lorenzo Valdez, who said,
This is Lorenzo Valdez calling in once again. I've actually only been listening to your podcast for the last couple of months. I think I found out about your podcast via an advertisement that you guys had on one of DC's new official podcasts, either DC Studios Showcase or DC High Volume Batman. Klana forever and always. Bye-bye.
Yeah, the podcast that he heard an ad for us on was DC High Volume. DC's reps reached out to us and wanted to promote that show on our podcast and also let us promote our show on theirs, which has happened a couple of times. Like Marvel's Wolverine podcast, The Long Night also did that.
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky over the years to hear from reps from Marvel and DC themselves, specifically within the podcast space.
But all I'm saying is we actually got listeners from the DC one.
Thanks, Lorenzo. The next caller is Eli, who said,
This is Eli, and I've been listening since March of 2020. You guys got me through the pandemic and straight through high school. But when the pandemic started, I got kicked out of school and started working. And so I needed something to listen to during my 9-hour shifts at the warehouse. And so I blew through all you guys' previous episodes pretty quick and started listening to the weekly uploads.
the pandemic year 2020, when that all started, I wasn't even sure this podcast was going to survive everything that was going on then, just because everything was really weird. And we managed to get through that year largely by just reviewing older Marvel and DC films, which thankfully there was a large backlog of content for us to look at because we know that Marvel and DC weren't putting out anything new at that time. So yeah, a lot of listeners found us during that time when a lot of people were listening to podcasts.
Yeah, and you and I actually started recording separately around that time because for a long time we were recording in the same room.
Right. But then, like everybody else, we started hopping on Zoom calls and stuff to collaborate. Great answer, Eli. Our next answer comes from CJ Kraft, who said,
Hey guys, CJ Kraft here. I've been listening so long I'm not sure when I started. I know it was around the show's beginning because it was before the first retooling. I can't believe it's already been 10 years. Every Tuesday, the entertainment's been top-notch. I don't know what I'm going to do with you guys gone. You'll be missed, but I'll look forward to the episodes we do get. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, CJ Kraft is one of our original listeners. I think he's been with us for a long time, and he's reached out time and again, and we've been lucky enough to hear from him because he's a talented writer, and we promoted some of his books on this podcast as well.
Yeah, for anyone who hasn't listened to the show from the very start, when CJ is talking about the retooling, he's talking about our first year where we were actually a bi-weekly show and we called ourselves the DC Marvel Battlecast.
That's right. Yeah, that's real old school.
Thanks, CJ. Our next answer comes from Alex Albro, who said,
Hey guys, found you in early 2023 when I was having to drive a lot. And I had a Marvel podcast I liked and was looking for a DC podcast to learn more about those characters. Found this one where I could learn about both and imaginary battles between the two and got hooked pretty instantly. I went through your whole library, except for movies and shows I haven't seen yet, in about a year and a half. And now I'm all caught up and look forward to listening every Tuesday. Congrats on the podcast, guys, and happy early 40th birthday.
I do not want to turn 40, so everybody just hold off on their birthday wishes for now.
I am not looking forward to that. Actually, I've already started telling people that I'm 40 because I might as well be. 39, really? You're 40.
Thanks for listening, Alex, and thanks for your answer. Our next answer comes from Matt from Texas.
Hey guys, Matt from Texas. The first time I heard about your podcast was on the TV and movie trivia podcast with Brian Sheehan, where Joe was a special guest for the Captain America First Avengers back in 2022. I jumped over here, that was about a year and a half ago, and just started listening and binged through every single one of your episodes and have loved every single one of them. Good job, guys.
Yeah, Brian has had me on his TV and movie trivia podcast as a guest for about 4 or 5 episodes, I think, and I've had a blast every time. I haven't gone on his show for a few months now, maybe almost a year, so I got to remedy that. I'll have to reach out to him again because I really love his podcast, and he has great trivia questions, and he's a really cool dude.
I was on his podcast in the fall of last year as sort of a tie-in to the Joker sequel that was coming out. We did trivia on the first Joker movie, and you could see how hyped I was for the Joker sequel. And I feel like the episode is very dated now because of how bad the Joker sequel actually was.
I got to go back and listen to it and just laugh at all of your misplaced enthusiasm. Thanks for the call, Matt. Our next answer comes from Christian Rabito, who said,
Hey y'all, it's Christian Rabito. I've been listening to this podcast for about 2 or 3 years now. My favorite part of this podcast has definitely been the Duel episodes. It's been fun listening to fictional fights between characters that we all love. I especially love the banter between you two. It's been fun to hear. But really, this podcast has just been a good way to tune out from the real world and all the stress and everything that entails and just have fun listening to nerdy stuff. So thanks for everything, y'all. Hope to hear from you soon.
Yeah, I'm not sure which episodes I prefer creating, the duels or the reviews. I know this podcast started with duels because you and I have been arguing about these characters fighting since we were little kids, but being film critics has also been a dream of ours, also since we were younger.
Right. Yeah, I think it depends on what episode we're currently doing. Like if we're currently doing a duel episode, I think, man, I can't wait to get to a review. And when we're doing a review, I think, man, I can't wait to get to a duel. So it's been a nice balance of having both formats available.
We're doing a lot of duels this year, just trying to do every single character under the sun, and I'm actually really enjoying it. It's a lot of work, but it's always fun to do.
Thanks, Christian. Our next caller was Riziel, who said,
Hey guys, this is Riziel. I've been listening to you guys for apparently like 9 years now because I remember starting like right around when you guys started. I found you guys on accident. I'm just sick of listening to music sometimes while I'm sitting at work, so I just started searching for something nerdy, something DC related. And you guys are the only one I listen to that doesn't sound like the comic book nerd, like, actually. So yeah, that's about it. See ya.
Well, Jonathan still sounds like that, I think.
That's fair. But actually, have you noticed that a lot of these callers are saying that they were searching for a DC podcast when they found this and not a Marvel podcast?
Well, yeah, I mean, Marvel has a lot of fans, so there's a lot more Marvel podcasts, and DC fans are kind of like solitary figures who don't really go out at night or put together podcasts, so they're harder to come by.
I'm sorry, DC has some amazing podcasts. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Way to profile DC fans.
I will profile DC fans all day long.
Okay, want to hear my profile of a Marvel fan?
Nope.
Well, too bad, because you're going to hear it. Marvel fans are stupid. They're just really dumb.
Why did you use the thesaurus for that one?
They are ignoramuses.
Thanks for calling in, Raziel. Our penultimate answer comes from Brian Rochester, who said,
Hi, it's Brian. I found Dynamic Duel by random searching for different podcasts about Marvel and DC. And I think the first episode I listened to was the I Vampire versus I forgot who other vampire is, but it's been a great show.
Yeah, that was Andrew Bennett, I Vampire versus Dracula. It was Marvel's version of Dracula. We put that out in October of 2023 as kind of like a spooky October vampire duel episode. I still contend that Andrew Bennett is the absolute worst name for a vampire and a DC character in general. It's just a fucking name, Andrew Bennett. So dumb.
Well, as compared to something like Nico Minoru?
Yeah, at least that's like unique and cool sounding. Nico Minoru will straight up stab your ass. Andrew Bennett will sell you flood insurance.
What is Blade's real name again?
Eric Brooks.
That's wild because that is the exact name of my accountant.
Touche. Well, I mean, at least he has the name Blade, which is still better than iVampire. Thanks for the call, Brian. Our final answer comes from our friends at Max Destruction, twins Scotty and Gilly, who said,
Scotty Macho here. Gilly Macho here. Max Destruction. I want to say my favorite episode you guys didn't air just because I want to bet against Gil when you did the stats for me against Martian Manhunter versus Vision, and DC guys won. It's all right. I got my bet back when we did Sentry versus Zod, and I won. Yeah. So been listening to you guys for 5 to 6 years now, and it's sad to see you guys go from the battles, but at least we still have the movie reviews.
And at least we still have Max Destruction with your guys' dope episodes.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this week's The Tick versus Goliath duel episode because Jonathan and I watched both of those cartoons growing up as kids. You guys do great. I think you kind of stole our whole shtick when it comes to twins talking about versus battles, but we'll let it slide because you guys are awesome.
Also, real quick, I'm confused because we actually did do a Martian Manhunter versus Vision episode.
Yeah, I think he said that maybe we didn't air it, but yeah, that was an episode back in like 2018, I want to say. I do want to give a special shout out to Spider Frank, who left us a message on Spotify comments, who wrote, I've been listening since 2016 when I was 12 years old, and now that I'm 21, it feels like I'm losing a great friend. I'll dearly miss the duel episodes, my favorite part of the show, and over the years, I forgot to say thank you.
I'm not crying, you're crying!
Right? Fucking gutted from that answer. Thank you so much, Spider Frank, for writing to us. That answer hurts on multiple levels because I feel bad that the show is ending in January, but also I feel bad because you were 12 years old when you started listening and now you're old enough to drink. So we have been doing this for a while. Those are all the answers, and now that we've gone through all of them, I hope it didn't seem like a big circle jerk on behalf of Jonathan and myself, but we truly wanted to spotlight the people who took the time to give us a call and leave such touching answers. It means a lot to us, and we can't wait to continue making episodes for you guys throughout the rest of this year. Because like we said last time, we got some good ones in the works, including this Mr. Mxyzptlk versus Impossible Man duel episode. But speaking of duels, that brings us to our question of the week.
What Marvel or DC character that we haven't done a duel with yet are you still hoping we get to by January? We've done so many characters, but we're looking specifically for characters that we have not done duels with.
Yeah, just a reminder that the calendar is already set by our executive producers, but we're interested in seeing how much that calendar aligns with listener expectations.
Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message can be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and award that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to Instagram. Be sure to answer before June 14th. But now it's time for the main event of this episode, where we pit the nigh omnipotent imp characters of Mr. Mxyzptlk versus Impossible Man. Okay, Mr. Mxyzptlk versus Impossible Man. I think I'm saying Mixie's name right. I've heard it a number of different ways, but that's the pronunciation I remember from the Superman 90s cartoon, in which Mixie made a few appearances voiced by Gilbert Gottfried.
Yeah, Impossible Man has made a few appearances in Marvel cartoons as well. I'm wondering if we should just refer to the characters as Mixie and Impy, as Impossible Man is sometimes known in the comic books from here on out for this episode, because it is really hard to say Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Oh yeah, no, I'm totally fine with that. He's often referred to as Mixie in the comics.
Or is that too cutesy for these two badass characters? I guess they're not really badass. They're both jokesters, right? They both like to play pranks. They both like to have fun. Although I will say that Mr. Mxyzptlk is a little bit more devious in his pranks than Impossible Man is.
Yeah, Mixie is definitely a villain in DC. He's sometimes partnered with the good guys, but it's pretty rare. Now, Mixie has also had several live-action appearances in Smallville and the Supergirl television series. I'm guessing we've never seen Impossible Man in live action.
No, we have not yet. He's kind of ridiculous looking. He kind of looks like a pickle. He looks like Pickle Rick.
I'm Pickle Rick! Now, to explain the methodology behind our duels, let's go to our sentient duel simulator, Alfred Jarvis 9000. AJ9K, tell our listeners how you go about determining a winner in our duel matchups.
Yes, of course, sir. The way I determine a winner between the contestants is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using the character's statistics. A Monte Carlo simulation is a probabilistic model used to determine outcomes through random sampling. In this case, I randomize the statistics along a normal distribution as a way to simulate the many variables that can occur during battle. The stat parameters are based on the official Marvel power grid, from which the DC character's statistics are extrapolated. Additional stat categories are included such as range, damage potential, versatility, and perception in order to create a more detailed and accurate simulation. The results of the 1,000 simulations provide a percentage of wins for each character. The contestant with the higher percentage is declared the victor, as they have a higher probability to win any given battle. In an equitable pairing, neither character should win 100% of the matches. The comic book stories have shown that there's even a way for Batman to defeat Superman, so the confidence rate of my method falls in line with the precedents that have been established in the source material. My mathematical simulations are without subjectivity or bias. Feats are not the sole consideration, nor are fan votes tabulated for determination of the winner.
Thanks, AJ9K. Before we run the simulations, though, we like to break down each character's histories and abilities before improvising a scenario on how we imagine one of the 1,000 simulations would play out beat for beat.
And I believe it's my turn to go first with the Marvel character backstory, so let me tell you guys all about Impossible Man. Born on the perilous world of Pop-Up in the 10th galaxy, the alien, later dubbed Impossible Man, belonged to a communal species whose members shared a single group mind and could instantly rearrange every molecule of their bodies into any form their imaginations conceived. Restless after millennia of surviving lethal predators, an adventurous Pop-Upian transformed himself into a starship and rocketed to Earth soon after the Fantastic Four's debut. Landing in New York City, he robbed a bank simply to buy lunch, then delighted in outmaneuvering police, soldiers, and the Fantastic Four. The Thing called him Impossible, and the giddy visitor adopted the nickname on the spot. Mr. Fantastic eventually realized the prankster craved attention. When every New Yorker agreed to ignore him, he declared the planet intolerably dull and blasted off in search of fresh amusement. You can learn more about the Fantastic Four in their duel against the Justice Society. He returned years later and lured the planet-devouring Galactus away from Earth by offering Pop-Up itself as sustenance. The collective consciousness of its people accepted the sacrifice, reasoning that their culture would endure within Impossible Man, their most adventurous emissary. Galactus consumed the hyper-adaptive world, but suffered near-fatal indigestion, leaving Impossible Man the lone living vessel of Pop-Up's mind. Inviting himself aboard the Fantastic Four's craft, he accompanied them home, determined to make Earth his playground. Almost immediately, he stormed into the fictional offices of Marvel Comics, demanding a series dedicated to his exploits. A hasty promise from editor Stan Lee averted disaster, and the trickster moved on to impersonate the newly inaugurated US president, foiling an assassination scheme involving mind control technology and the cyborg Deathlock. Taking up temporary residence in the Baxter Building, he was ambushed by Claw and the Molecule Man. Recovering mid-battle, he proved immune to sonic vibration and molecular manipulation once he anticipated them and helped free the Fantastic Four after Molecule Man possessed Reed Richards. Concluding that the team took life far too seriously, he drifted to Hollywood and gleefully disrupted multiple film shoots until boredom again set in. Back in New York, he visited The Thing and sculptor Alicia Masters. Their obvious affection inspired him to split his own essence and create a companion, Impossible Woman. Following Reed and Sue's example, the couple soon produced thousands of impossible kids. Domestic squabbles over who should lead the family erupted into an intergalactic scavenger hunt. On Earth, the Impossible Man confiscated the X-Men's mansion, Nick Fury's eye patch, Zabu the saber-toothed tiger, Doctor Strange's skylight, Iron Man's prototype armor, and other trophies before the X-Men, backed by Shi'ar Empress Lilandra, forced the Impossible family to return every item and apologize before a tribunal of alien races. Determined to restore his bruised ego, Impossible Man revisited the X-Mansion but found only the teenage New Mutants. Their techno-organic teammate Warlock accepted his challenge to a global shape-changing duel that tore across Manhattan's docks, Rio's beaches, London's rooftops, Moscow's spires, and Tokyo's streets. Warlock finally triumphed by altering his own coloration, something a Pop-Upian could not duplicate, prompting Impossible Man to storm back into space. While evading a war fleet from the planet Urganar, he irritated the solemn Silver Surfer, insisting the Herald find a sense of humor, and secretly followed him during a confrontation with the death-worshipping Titan Thanos. Convinced that cosmic levity might just yet save the day, the prankster eventually departed in search of easier sport. Family Duty resurfaced when Impossible Woman demanded a summer vacation on Earth for their 4,682 offspring. They scattered around the globe to sightsee. Impossible Man pestered Spider-Man during a stakeout, impersonated occult tomes inside Doctor Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum, and briefly became the Punisher's rifle before pieing the vigilante in the face. A chaotic day at an amusement park ended with child number 4682 missing, sending Impossible Man to consult the Watcher on the moon, scour the microverse, and stir up Asgard, where Queen Frigga halted the commotion with a royal spanking. The youngster was finally located fronting a rock band, and the relieved family launched a galaxy-wide concert tour. Left to his own devices once more, Impossible Man infiltrated a supervillain poker game at the infamous villain hangout, The Bar with No Name, and disguised himself as an extra ace of spades, igniting a brawl among the hardened criminals. Feeling slighted when the Hulk's friend Rick Jones failed to invite him to a wedding, he mailed invitations to disgruntled villains and rival alien empires, transforming the ceremony into chaos. Later, Impossible Man badgered Cable and his X-Force team during their island vacation into mentoring 3 of his apathetic, impossible teens. However, the kids stayed glued to their holoscreens instead of training until a colossal crustacean burst from the lagoon and swatted their father clear through a cliff. The shock of seeing Impossible Man injured finally spurred them to fight alongside the X-Force, and after helping subdue the beast, they teleported off, calling themselves Impossible X, clad in pouches and straps tactical gear patterned after Cable's. You can learn more about X-Force in their duel against the Outsiders. Returning to Earth under the guise of the Silver Surfer, Impossible Man warned of the parasitic Hamogen, aliens who merged with native populations. During the battle, he was vaporized, reforming inside Spider-Man's lungs as microscopic vapor that Spidey vomited into a towering Pop-Upian conglomerate that separated the parasites from their hosts. The Fantastic Four negotiated a compromise with the Hamogen that transplanted into the new exhaustible Pop-Upian biomass, and the fused race left peacefully. Later, Impossible Man was in a Himalayan village suffering from hiccups that were triggering uncontrollable transformations. A visit from the Thing was able to frighten the hiccups away, after which Impossible Man attended Grimm's long-delayed bar mitzvah. Seeking profit, he partnered with the showman assassin Arcade to market self-morphing toys made from his own tissue, but switched sides when those toys attacked the Human Torch. You can learn more about Arcade in his duel against the Riddler. During a reality-rending uprising led by the Japanese death god Amatsu Mikaboshi, Impossible Man tried to distract the deity with slapstick forms, but was unraveled into nothingness. Yet his intangible consciousness soon recovered. Observing a later clash between Hulk, Red Hulk, and the telepathic titan Zemnu, Impossible Man used a Valizian compounder to fuse the 2 Hulks into a single behemoth so they could defeat Zemnu before separating them. Paternal concern returned when Impossible Man implored Mr. Fantastic's science organization known as the Future Foundation to educate his introverted genius son, whom he lamented was far too possible. In exchange, Impossible Man supplied the Foundation with intelligence on the time-lost Fantastic Four. He later celebrated with the reunited Richards family on the moon. Most recently, while on a journey of self-improvement, Impossible Man attempted to master the Creed discipline of Zen fascist yoga within the Dark Dimension. His meditation destabilized multiple realities until Doctor Strange and Beast persuaded him to desist, whereupon he departed once more for parts unknown. And that's Impossible Man. Powers-wise, Impossible Man is of the Pop-Upian race, giving him the innate ability to rearrange and convert the molecules of his body into anything, mimicking most of their properties. This includes the ability to separate himself for the purposes of self-duplication or manifesting separate entities. He can increase or decrease his mass between beings the size of Galactus or down to the microscopic. He can also use his molecular shifting power to fly, teleport, and even produce energy or force. One drawback of Impossible Man's power is that he traditionally can't alter his color outside of his green-purple scheme across the tonal spectrum. When he uses his power to shift his form or teleport, it produces a loud pop sound. And that is the Impossible Man.
Wait, so you're telling me that Impossible Man is not a reality warper?
No, but through his powers, he can mimic a lot of other abilities, even things that you wouldn't think that shape-changing could accomplish, like telekinesis. One time he pretended to be Magneto and was able to simulate his powers of magnetism, essentially, I believe, by reducing offshoots of his own matter into molecules that could affect other matter.
The dude sounds more like Martian Manhunter than Mxyzptlk. Not gonna lie.
Impossible Man is not only far more durable than Martian Manhunter because he's not a fucking wuss when it comes to fire, but also his molecular shapeshifting ability is far more versatile.
I'll just say this now. I don't think it's going to be versatile enough because Mxyzptlk, I think, is way more powerful. Let me get into his backstory. Mr. Mxyzptlk hails from the 5th dimension, a plane of reality so advanced that its inhabitants and technology appear as magic to those in the 3rd dimension. Though a being of immense power, Mxy adopted the appearance of a mischievous imp, a diminutive figure often dressed in eccentric attire, including a bowler hat and outlandish colors. Drawn to Earth out of sheer curiosity and a desire for amusement, Mxy took particular interest in Superman, whose sense of justice and order stood in stark contrast to Mxy's chaos and whimsy. You can learn more about Superman in our Superman vs. Dr. Doom episode. On Earth 2, Mxyzptlk plagued Superman with unpredictable tricks and reality-altering antics, defying the laws of physics and common sense using 5th-dimensional technology. Incapable of defeating Mxy through conventional means, Superman discovered that saying Mxyzptlk's name backward would banish him to the 5th dimension for a mandatory period of 90 days. This became a recurring tactic in their confrontations, with Mxy always returning once the banishment window expired. On Earth 1, a new incarnation of Mxyzptlk emerged, targeting Superman both in Metropolis and retroactively during his youth as Superboy in Smallville. In one encounter, Superman turned the tables by entering the 5th dimension himself, where Mxy was running for mayor. Despite Mxy's attempt to trap Superman there by tricking him into saying Namrapus, or Superman backwards, Superman escaped by saying Lilac, his Kryptonian name spelled backward. The Imp's last notable appearance before the Crisis on Infinite Earths occurred was when he revealed himself as the mastermind behind Superman's recent adversity. Claiming boredom after millennia of impishness, Mxy chose to embrace true malevolence, using his power to empower other villains and ensnare the Fortress of Solitude. Upon being discovered, he took on a grotesque true form that caused pain in others to behold. When Superman accidentally banished him to the Phantom Zone while Mxyzptlk said his name backward, the dimensional collision tore the Imp apart. Distraught over causing Mxy's death, Superman depowered himself using gold kryptonite and retired. Following the multiversal reset, Mxy remained a reality-defying trickster, though was revealed to be a sane psychological researcher from the 5th dimension who came to Earth to study human behavior. Initially rational and curious, repeated exposure to the Three Stooges films warped his mind and transformed him into the maniac being known as Mxyzptlk. At one point, Mxy visited the Joker for advice on how to better torment Superman. The Joker tricked the Imp into giving up 99.9% of his power, allowing the Joker to gain control over reality itself and reshape the world into a grotesque nightmare. Rendered nearly powerless, Mxy wandered Metropolis in a daze until he recovered enough sanity to aid Superman and Steel in escaping Earth and confronting the Joker. With assistance from the Spectre, Mxy helped reverse the damage and restore the world. You can learn more about the Joker in his duel against the Green Goblin. Later, Mxy was captured and imprisoned by the deranged Superboy Prime, who sought to use the Imp's power to recreate Earth Prime. The ritual failed due to the sacrifice of a heroic sorceress named Anataz Arataz. Though Mxy tried to save her, he respected her decision to atone through death. It was during this time that he cryptically revealed that over the ages, he had assumed many names familiar to Earth mythology, including Loki and Anansi. In post-Flashpoint continuity, Mxyz's presence was initially subtle. His wife, Mxyzptlk, known as Mrs. Nyxly, mentioned him during her own appearances, noting that he had fallen into a coma following a catastrophic battle with their former court jester, Lord Vindictivix. In this new continuity, it was revealed that Mxyz was actually a traveling entertainer who performed illusions for the King of Zerf, charming both the monarch and Princess Nyxly. Jealous of the attention Mxyz received, Vindictivix attempted to assassinate him. The attempt went awry, and the king was killed instead. Enraged, Vindictivix chased Mxyz and Nyxly into the third dimension. On Earth, the couple disguised themselves as humans and lived in Metropolis. Mxyz, performing as Mr. XXX, even fathered a child before succumbing to an Earth-based illness that placed him in a coma. When Superman defeated Vindictivix's final attack, Mxyz awakened, suggesting that he had faith in Superman's victory all along, though whether this was sincere or a deeper part of an elaborate ruse remained unclear. Later, Mxyz was revealed to be a captive of a mysterious figure known as Mr. Oz, who was later revealed to be Superman's birth father, Jor-El. Mxyz believed Superman would rescue him, though over time grew embittered when no help came. Freeing himself, he confronted Superman, Lois, and their son, Jonathan, unaware that they were from pre-Flashpoint continuity. Once he realized the truth, he fused them with their post-Flashpoint counterparts and retreated to the fifth dimension, expressing fear that a greater being, likely Dr. Manhattan, was hunting him. Later, Mxyz was contacted telepathically by Martian Manhunter and Starman to assist the Justice League during a sixth-dimensional multiversal crisis. Tricked into believing his 90-day banishment had ended, Mxyz arrived on Earth, unleashing havoc. However, he agreed to help once informed that the Source Wall's collapse threatened the entire multiverse, including the fifth dimension itself. Using his power, he opened a portal to the sixth dimension for Superman, explaining he had imbued Superman with fifth-dimensional energy from their earliest encounters. After Superman and others departed, Mxyz began erasing parts of the city until another fifth-dimensional imp, the Batman superfan known as Batmite, and the Legion of Doom, intervened and subdued him. And that's Mxyz's backstory. Power-wise, Mr. Mxyzptlk possesses nigh omnipotent abilities derived from the laws of the fifth dimension, granting him total control over reality in the third and fourth dimensions. His powers allowed him to bend, alter, or ignore the laws of time, space, matter, and energy at will. He could conjure objects from nothing, teleport across dimensions, transmute beings or environments, and warp reality. Immune to temporal manipulation, he cannot be undone by time travel or erased by retroactive changes. Though physically small, he is indestructible, and his only consistent vulnerability is his self-imposed rules of banishment, frequently being just saying his name backward, which returns him to the fifth dimension for a time. He is a hyper-intelligent prankster and considered to be one of the most dangerous entities in the DC multiverse.
If he's so powerful, how come he was almost taken out by like a common cold? It sounds like he was put into a coma by some standard earthbound sickness, something that would never happen to Impossible Man. For as powerful as you claim him to be, he seems largely limited in what he has done compared to what he can do. Did you ever hear about John Byrne's fun little Easter egg where he implied that Mr. Mxyzptlk is Impossible Man when he travels to the Marvel timeline? Like, he changes his form to look like Impossible Man, and they're actually the same character across multiple dimensions.
Yeah, I was definitely aware of that. That's why I guess I assumed Impossible Man was a reality warper, though I guess that's not accurate.
I assume that Byrne's theory that he put out there was debunked when the characters actually met up in the Superman Silver Surfer crossover comic. Although you could say that since Pop-Upians can duplicate themselves indefinitely, that they actually are still the same character, just different parts of that same entity.
And also, since Mxyzptlk is not bound by time, so he could have been battling a past or future version of himself.
In a world where fantasies collide and heroes clash, one podcast network rises above the rest. Prepare yourself for the ultimate showdowns in comic books, video games, movies, and anime. The Dynamite Podcast Network presents Console Combat, where video game legends brawl every Monday. Dynamic Duel, where comic book titans smash every Tuesday. Max Destruction, where TV and action heroes battle every Wednesday. And Sendro World, where anime champions clash every Thursday. Join us as we speculate on the matches and, armed with the power of mathematical simulations, discover who will emerge victorious. Visit dynamicpodcast.com, where we settle the debate and settle the score.
Now that we got the characters' histories and abilities out of the way, let's speculate on how one of the 1,000 simulated matches will go. The winner's determined by simulations, not the speculation, but it's fun to imagine how the fight could play out. AJ9K, what are the rules of our speculation?
Well, I should say there are no rules, other than the characters have no prior knowledge of the other going into the fight. All they are aware of starting out is that the other character is a threat that needs to be eliminated. For the speculation, the contestants will begin approximately 50 meters apart in a nondescript environment that will have no bearing on the match itself, as no environmental statistics are considered in my simulations. The contestants must earn victory on their own merit.
All right, then, let's get into it. Mixy and Impy meet on the battlefield. Who goes first?
I think Impossible Man would go first, because he'd just be so excited for someone to play with. And with like a pop sound, all of a sudden he turns into like 100-foot tall birthday cake, where each tier of the cake is like the size of a story.
A birthday cake? Okay. So Mixy's probably like, is it my birthday? What the heck? And so he'll teleport to the top of the cake just to blow out the candles. And the gust from his breath is going to be so powerful that it's going to scatter the cake all across the environment, just spreading Impy thin everywhere.
But all of a sudden, from within the cake pops out Impossible Man, and he's like, surprise, congratulations, you get to be my plaything for the day. And then he transforms into a firework rocket that shoots right into Mxyzptlk and explodes into these like dazzling green and purple fireworks. And the display is so loud and powerful, each one being like a TNT explosion, that Mixy is just blown to smithereens from the fireworks.
Well, I don't think he would be blown to smithereens, but let's say he's charred and blackened from the explosion, right? So he's going to be angry. You know, he'll probably grab his hat and slam it to the ground and be like, that does it. And that's when he's going to conjure a giant vacuum that's going to suck up all of the sparkly bits of Impy raining down from the sky. And when the vacuum bag is full, he's going to unzip it and dump all the sludgy green and purple goop into a giant trash bag that he's going to tie off and be like, time to take out the trash. And he's going to drop kick the trash bag, sending it right into space.
Okay, so Impossible Man is in a trash bag. He disappears from sight in the atmosphere, but then all of a sudden, this giant green smiling face appears in the sky. And it gets bigger and larger as it comes hurtling back down to Earth, because Impossible Man teleported out of the trash bag and then transformed into an asteroid that's in the shape of his head. And as he comes careening back onto the battlefield, he's like, here's Impy, and he crashes into and obliterates Mxyzptlk into nothing.
Well, no, Mixy sees Impy careening toward him, and that's when he rolls up the sleeves of a baseball uniform that he's now wearing. And, you know, he taps his baseball bat to the ground a couple times and swings right at the perfect time, just smashing Impy into a whole bunch of rocky bits. And he's like, grand slam! He's going to start rounding the bases in this giant baseball stadium that he just conjured up.
A stadium?
Yeah.
Okay, well, after a bunch of popping sounds, all of a sudden the stadium fills up with a bunch of duplicates of Impossible Man who start booing Mxyzptlk.
What?
And the crowd then starts throwing tomatoes, like green tomatoes, and purple banana peels, and knives and grenades. Someone even throws a shoe, and Mxyzptlk just gets pelted.
Well, Mixy's like, what the heck? And to protect himself, he's going to teleport into the Jumbotron, which, you know, has his face on it now. And he transforms the stadium itself into like this giant mecha body with a screen for a face and metal beams for limbs and cement fists and feet. And he's just going to start stomping on and terrorizing those, what is it, Pop-Upians?
Yeah, Pop-Upians, yeah. Okay, so the crowd of Pop-Upians, they're going to flee this Mecha Stadium version of Mxyzptlk. But then these impossible men start climbing on each other's shoulders. And they amass themselves into like a giant composite Sasquatch, like a green Sasquatch. And the beast is going to swing his arms into Mecha Mixy, just reducing him to rubble.
Okay. Well, Mixy, he's going to climb out of this rubble, and he's probably all dirty and cursing. And all of a sudden, a light bulb is going to appear above his head. And he's going to pull a chain attached to it. And that's when everything goes black. But suddenly, a spotlight flashes on in the darkness. And we're going to see Impossible Man in his regular form standing there just looking around like, what? Where am I? And that's when another spotlight is going to shine on Mixy, who's holding this badass electric guitar shaped like an axe, and he's wearing sunglasses, and he's just going to shred this gnarly guitar solo so epic, so powerful, that it just shakes Impy to his very core, and he's so humbled by it that he just gives up the match.
What is happening? So it's a battle of the bands type thing.
Sure. Yep.
Okay, well, all right, Impossible Man would be game for that, but like he's not going to give up. He may be impressed by Mixy's performance, but he's up for the challenge. So Impossible Man transforms a keyboard right in front of him, and it's like this crazy multi-tiered looking keyboard with keys that don't even just go from A to G, but play a range of notes from A to Z. Okay? And Impossible Man just starts jamming out a keyboard solo that's so much more epic and so otherworldly sounding, like hitting all these chaotic notes. And then suddenly, when his solo is over, Mixy just vanishes from sight back to the fifth dimension.
Why?
Because within Impossible Man's solo, he randomly spelled Mixy's name backwards using all those extra music notes.
What?
Yeah, so part of his solo was like KLT, whatever, however you spell his name, backwards.
Well, that was convenient. Okay, but I'm going to say Mixy, since he's from the fifth dimension, he was able to recognize what was going on, because apparently their music notes also go up to Z. And before Impy could finish his solo, that's when Mixy uses his axe guitar to chop up the keyboard into pieces, and then he just decapitates Impy with it.
You think that would kill him?
I don't know. I guess not, but let's say Mixy is so angry by what almost happened that he's going to banish the Impossible Man to the fifth dimension instead, so he's trapped for eternity. Match over.
I'm going to say that Impossible Man played his solo so quickly that Mr. Mxyzptlk didn't even have time to react. Because he probably played this with like multiple hands and multiple arms, you know?
Well, no, I mean, Mxyzptlk could stop time.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. Let's go ahead and input these character stats and run the simulations and find out whether Impossible Man pulled off this reverse name keyboard solo, or if Mixy caught on to him and then banished Impossible Man to the fifth dimension. We'll find out which of these scenarios happens when we run the simulations.
AJ9K, hit it.
Inputting data, running calculations, processing results, simulations complete.
That was a fun match. These are really fun characters. They may be one of the most fun matches I think we've ever done on this podcast.
I mean, the sky was kind of the limit, right? So it was kind of fun to use my imagination to try to counter what you were doing. Even just starting off with their birthday cake is just so unique for our duel speculations. I don't see that ever happening again. This was definitely a fun one.
Well, stats-wise, both characters obviously are insanely powerful. They were both maxed out in so many stats like speed and evasiveness, durability, and strength.
But they both suck at fighting. You don't really see either of these guys throwing down in hand-to-hand combat in any sort of trained or meaningful way. They just have too much other abilities at their disposal to even do that.
Right. Yeah, both characters are insanely versatile, although we did give the edge to Mixy when it came to versatility.
Right, because he can warp reality as opposed to just transform. He also got the edge in terms of perception because he can kind of perceive things outside of the standard three-dimensional space-time. We said he was smarter than Impossible Man, who's kind of childlike. And we said that Mxyzptlk has the edge in damage, considering he's nearly omnipotent.
Not only that, we also gave him the edge in range, considering Mixy is not really bound by space.
Right. So with all that said, Jonathan, who do you think's taking this one?
It's no contest. Mixy's totally going to win this.
What a dumbass.
Wait, what? Okay, well, if I'm a dumbass, then so are 73% of our Instagram poll takers who agreed that Mixy's going to win.
You all heard me.
I would be surprised if it was not you who was, in fact, the dumbass.
Well, let's find out. AJ9K, the results, please.
Here you are, sir.
All right, the winner between Mr. Mxyzptlk and Impossible Man is Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Oh, look at that, dumbass.
Am I the dumbass, though? Because although Mr. Mxyzptlk won 80.3% of his matches over Impossible Man's 19.7% victory rate, in the end, according to John Byrne, these guys might be the same character. So, Mr. Mxyzptlk's win rate is also Impossible Man's win rate, and I consider this one a tie.
Okay, but even if they're the same character, you're admitting that the DC version of the character had the higher win rate.
I admit nothing. I admit it's a tie.
How is it a tie when the percentages differed?
That's just how it works, man, with like fifth dimensional math. If you can't wrap your head around it, I don't know what to tell you. We both win. Yay for Marvel. Way to go, guys. We did it.
You can't beat crazy, I guess. But that does it for this duel. AJ9K, help close us out.
Thanks for listening to Dynamic Duel. Visit the show's website at dynamicduel.com and follow us on Instagram at Dynamic Duel Podcast. You can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/dynamicduel and joining a tier that works for you, or by rating and reviewing Dynamic Duel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or on our website. Don't forget to listen to the other shows in the Dynamite Podcast Network, including Max Destruction, Senjo World, and Console Combat.
All right, our next episode is going to be a team duel. This time we're going to find out who would win in a fight between DC's Freedom Fighters versus Marvel's X Factor. It's one of the biggest mutant teams that we haven't gotten to yet. A lot of great characters in X Factor, and I'm really looking forward to that match.
But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, John Starosky,
Zachary Hepburn,
Dustyn Balcom,
Miggy Matanguihan,
Nathaniel Wagner,
Levi Yeaton,
Austin Wesolowski,
AJ Dunkerley,
Nick Abanto,
Scott Camacho,
Gil Camacho,
Adam Speas,
Dean Maleski,
Devin Davis,
Joseph Kersting,
Josh Liner,
Mike Williams,
Oscar Galvez,
and Paul Graves for helping make this podcast possible. We'll talk to you guys next week. Up, and away.
True believers.
I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Mr. Mixio spit on it hawk toi.